Hello and welcome to Confessions of a Former Corporate Warrior. I spent 22 years in corporate America, and during that time, I had some pretty wild stuff happen to me. On this channel, I'll be sharing stories of my experiences, but more importantly, the lessons that I learned from those experiences. Now, first, quick disclaimer. This is not about calling anybody out. These stories come from different companies, different managers, and different points in my career. This is not about exposing anyone. This is about helping people to recognize toxic workplaces and bad behavior at work so that they can better advocate for themselves and also know that they're not going crazy and they're not alone. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, then you are in the right place. Today's story is titled Pregnancy Accommodations Shouldn't Be a Fight. So I had a very challenging pregnancy, and the main issue that I was dealing with during my pregnancy was insomnia. I had severe insomnia, and I didn't sleep for weeks, and then weeks went into months. And because I was pregnant, I couldn't take any of the usual over-the-counter sleep medication. So it was kind of a back and forth trial and error process with my doctor. Finally, my doctor was able to get me on some medication that was able to help kind of level me out. Fast forward a few weeks, and I was traveling for a client meeting, and it was far enough away where I just had to stay at a hotel the night before the meeting. Well, in that hotel room the night before, I did not get one wink of sleep. It was awful. I just laid there the whole night trying to sleep and then realizing I wasn't going to fall asleep and then getting anxiety about not sleeping. And then it just kept on downward spiraling from there. I think it was because when I was at home and I couldn't sleep, I was able to transfer to the couch or to the guest room. But in the hotel room, I was stuck, and it made me extremely claustrophobic. The next day, I talked to my manager and told my manager what kind of a night that I had. And the main response I got from the manager was, "Are you able to do this client meeting?" To which I said, "Sure, I'll pull myself together and do this meeting." Shortly after that event, I spoke with my manager about not traveling overnight for the rest of my pregnancy and just traveling during the day. And anything that would require an overnight travel, we could do as a virtual meeting. This was a while back. This was when a lot of meetings were still in person and not done virtually. But virtual meetings, Zoom was definitely still used at the time that this story took place. So I asked my manager if I could do that, and my manager said no, which of course fed into my anxiety even more. But what made the situation even worse was that after that, my manager started to double check on everything that I did. My manager started to follow up on every single client request. My manager followed up on emails that were 3-4 months old to just double check to make sure that I had done what needed to be done. She was trying to catch me on something that I hadn't done. And basically, my manager was just micromanaging me, and they had never done that before. We ended up having to get HR looped in when I dropped the term pregnancy discrimination, and HR did give me an accommodation to allow me to only travel during the day and to not travel at night. But let's just say that after getting HR involved, my relationship with my manager, but more importantly, my manager's behavior towards me, definitely changed. So what would I have done differently? Well, there's not much I can change about being pregnant and the situation I had while being pregnant. But looking back, I see that a lot of my issues were due to work-related anxiety. And I wish I would have taken the time to actually address that, acknowledge it, and work through it instead of just blaming it on pregnancy hormones and pushing through. Mental health is just as important as physical health, and we should never be ashamed to seek help for our mental health. In terms of lessons learned, two main lessons that I learned. The first one is that managers should always be supportive and empathetic of pregnant employees. If your manager is not supportive and empathetic of you when you are pregnant, then that is a situation where you should definitely loop in HR. Oftentimes, I'm not a huge fan of looping in HR because they are there to protect the company. But in situations like pregnancy accommodations, it's definitely a good idea to loop in HR if your manager is not accommodating you in the way that you need to be accommodated. The other big lesson that I learned is that pregnancy accommodations are actually pretty common, and they're covered under the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And what ADA allows is for an employee to request an accommodation. And an employer, as long as it's a reasonable accommodation, that employer has to do everything within their power to meet that accommodation unless it causes undue hardship on the employer. Now, of course, with me being pregnant, that's just for a couple of months. It's not forever. So it definitely did not cause an undue hardship on the employer, just something that they had to work around for a few months. If you've experienced anything like this in corporate America, please share your story in the comments. It could be extremely helpful to other people to know that they're not alone. Thank you so much for watching, and please stay tuned for my next video, which is titled "The Interview I Should Have Ran Away From." See you soon.